seems fair to me. Fair decision. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Hey, thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. Wow, you look good. That's one of the topics we're going to discuss in just a moment. But first, let's meet the panelists assembled around the table for this edition, starting with, she looks good. She's Wendy Wiese joining us from KTRS and
I'll be
beyond.
in that seat next week.
Mr. Joe Holleman from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He's looking good. And from the Riverfront Times, he's looking okay. Reid Hartmann. No, he always looks great. Adam Aronson once told me that, and I'll tell you more about that later. And the one and only Alvin Reid, always looking great from St. Louis American and STLmag.com. And, of course, Joe, we are talking about Don Marsh, who apparently, as you reported, had Karen Foss, the legendary anchor, on his program a week or so ago, and he opened the conversation by saying, you look good, and then that's where the trouble began.
And all heck broke loose, did it not? You know, I got the notice that that Don was off the air, and so I called out there, and I got a hold of Don eventually, and it was clear that he did not want to talk about it, and at first didn't. Later, another reporter, Jeremy Kohler, talked to him on the weekend, because in that time, Don just said that it was an environment he didn't want to work in anymore after 13 years or something doing it. And I thought, something's fishy, but he was adamant about, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. That was preempted by Miss Foss putting a post on Facebook where she attributes it to Don being called into a meeting on the Wednesday morning. I talked to Don on Friday. And it was mentioned that in greeting Karen in an interview that he said, you look good. And I suppose warn him about, in a hashtag #MeToo way, about commenting about someone's looks. And that is then when he decided, I'm done, and I'm guessing is referring to his not an environment I wanted to work in any longer. And so that's how it came about. I have not heard, KWMU has said that he was not let go, that he resigned, and that is indeed true. He resigned. No one threatened to fire him. Sounds to me like someone called Don into a meeting and with an abysmal lack of context decided to throw a hashtag on this situation. I don't know if that was to force Don out. I don't know. But it seemed it was handled terribly that a person would be called to task, a person who had been in the media for 45 years in St. Louis, 1971, conversing with a woman who is arguably was the most popular anchor ever in St. Louis. And to bring that up in some sort of meeting to chastise him, I don't think was a smart move in the slightest bit.
Well, there's one thing about St. Louis, whatever, commercial TV is not what it once was, for sure. But St. Louis loves its iconic TV, is a loyal town. Karen Foss was, I think, retired the trophy as the top TV broadcaster in St. Louis history, and has really absolute credibility. And so this does not end well, particularly for the station, in my opinion, just because, and again, I don't have any idea if the station was upset about it or not upset. I have no idea. But the fact is, I'm guessing, I don't know, Don Marsh, I'm thinking this story resonated greatly with people because Don's such a good guy, and
it resonated also because people are tired of this politically correct nonsense. If I said you look good, and as a matter of fact, Adam Aronson, the late banker, once told me, Reid Hartmann looks great on television. Charlie, you look terrible. And he was probably accurate. I'm sure he was accurate. But, you know, people say that, and you don't freak out about this kind of stuff.
And with all due respect to our beleaguered, esteemed colleague, Mr. Marsh, because he said that this is very similar to, he said he believes that this is a generational thing, and I know that we'll get to that in a minute. I don't see these two instances being equal in any way, and I'll explain that in just a bit. But Don Marsh is, there are, in the media business, if we're all being honest, whether you are male or female, there's a certain amount, there are certain shades of inappropriate behavior in a newsroom. It is sort of like being in the monkey house at a zoo. I mean, really and truly. Sometimes you have to because it's gallows humor. You know, you're just sort of in the trenches working with each other. Occasionally things get off color. Occasionally things get inappropriate. I had the pleasure of working with Don Marsh on a fill-in basis. He was down at KMOX, and he is so unbelievably gentlemanly, and above that even, what transcends even his gentlemanly character is his sense of professionalism. So for them to behave, to respond this way, I think it's hysterical, and I think that we have weaponized the Me Too movement, and we have become a nation of hysterical 13-year-old girls. Like this is like, it's like hysteria. This has nothing to do with, decorum.
But as Joe points out, Don resigned and he wasn't fired. So we shouldn't act like, they shanghaied him because of something he said. It just got to a point where he apparently felt he didn't want to work there anymore.
Well, and I think that's when you talk about the weaponizer, as I had called it earlier, is while I think that there are many great things from the awareness of #MeToo that can be done, it also lends itself to be used as a tool to do other things.
Sure.
In a case, if you want someone to quit, you imagine you've been doing something and you've been in the business for 45 years and some young person calls you in and makes a statement like that, even to bring it up. Now, again, wasn't disciplined for it, but for someone to bring that up shows a complete lack of respect. First of all,
well, and a lack of institutional memory.
And a lack of context, which is what all hashtags lose.
Okay.
Is to what somebody
like Don Marsh gets a cake. He gets a cake, he leaves on his own terms. That is something that they do not understand, especially in this town where people are so loyal.
That's my point about that, but go ahead.
Can I?
Yeah,
right. One, I remember hearing they and people acting like 13-year-old girls, were they men or women, and if they make a bad decision or a good decision, I'd kind of like, right or wrong, I used to be young, and I used to manage people that were older than me. And maybe what my reaction was in the mid-'80s was different to what some man or lady's reaction was in 1965. It was different, okay? Now, respect Don greatly, been on the show. When Mike Sampson died, I filled in when they were looking for a replacement. I'm going to be honest with you, because I've called out people for not being up front. I did not know the Karen Foss thing went down. I contacted them about filling in, and I hope I get to do that, okay? I don't know what happened, but I do know that, the man, great respect. And I'm sad that he's not doing the show anymore.
And I think broadening this to the Me Too is a little I don't know if I agree with broadening it. We don't know enough about what was really going on there. And the Me Too movement, I agree that, well, let's go.
Well, let's move on with the Me Too movement with Joe Biden, who, of course, the former vice president, was accused by Lucy Flores, who was running for lieutenant governor in Nevada, of putting his hands on her back, Wendy, and then sniffing her hair and kissing her on the head. And he came out with a video this week saying, hey, he gets it, times have changed, he's going to amend his behavior and be more responsible. But Gene Carnahan, the former U.S. Senator from Missouri, came out in his defense saying that, yeah, he touched her, and not only was it appropriate, she appreciated it quite a bit. And I actually think she saved his bacon this week. She was quoted in the New York Times defending him, and I think that was part of his road to recovery. What do you think?
I think that as much as his bacon could be saved, she saved it. But I think that 3 more women came out today and accused him, and one of them was an intern in the White House, and she, was speaking through the eyes of a younger woman. I give all the credit in the world for, being a loyal and true friend, and I do believe Gene Carnahan means what she is saying. He has had an enormous amount of tragedy in his life, to lose his wife, to lose his daughter, to lose his son, to cancer just several years ago. And I have to say, though, that if he didn't have that sort of painful past, if she would be walking up to the line and saying, hey, no, there's no story here, because There are so many photographs of him coming up from behind, putting his hands on a woman's shoulders, nuzzling her neck. That is a really uncomfortable situation for any woman, much less some of the younger girls that he has done it to. And yes, I am fully aware of the president's behavior before we go down that road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he has a problem here, and Gene Carnahan might have helped with a couple of buckets of water out of the boat.
Well,
but
you know,
he's
the one thing in his defense, I will say, he is too handsy, and the videos and the photos have come out,
Right.
which I didn't really know about, and he's too tactile, as they say. But he's always doing it in front of the cameras. It's not like he's behind closed doors like Harvey Weinstein or Bill Cosby. He's doing it in front of C-SPAN and in front of CBS and CNN.
But
so
there have been
he
sort
must
of
not
off
think it's
out
wrong.
of the public eye accusations made as well.
I think he's figuring out that it's not acceptable, and you know, there's too much of it. And the reason I started to say this about Don Marsh, hashtag Me Too can be too broadly applied, because there are examples such as you just mentioned. Charlie Rose, one of the great legends of PBS. What's his name? Matt Lauer. I mean, those were examples which turned out to be the right result from Me Too that didn't happen. But, you know, I think good for Jean Carnahan that she stood up. Some of this is generational, honestly. And the question for Joe Biden is, will he be inoculated? This will not hurt him in a general election at all. So the question is, how long is this story going to last in the primary season? If he gets, you know, it looks like he's going to go ahead and declare. And my guess is this will not be disqualifying among people who are going to vote for him.
Well,
anyway.
maybe not. You know, I think times have changed, because speaking of PBS, and you were mentioning Charlie Rose, the most successful PBS host in the 1990s was a USC professor by the name of Leo Buscaglia. He made more money than anybody else, and he was the guy who said, you gotta hug other people. You should be putting your arms around other people all the time. But that was the 90s, and this is 2019, and times have changed.
Well, okay, we can take it back to the 80s or whatever, and I don't know. This is a example. Senator Carnahan was here last week. She was taping something just as we got done.
That was McCaskill.
McCaskill. What did I say, Carnahan?
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
God, I'm losing my mind. And she's, you know, walked down the hall and seen her a while, and I honestly said, like, hey, how you doing? And I went to, like, give her just a quick hug, and then I did one of these numbers, because I was just kind of like, oh, that's right.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, you know.
That's...
And, you know, I didn't think about it literally until we were just talking about this.
Wow, that's
and I just...
And I think it was the hashtag Me Too is overall a very good thing. I think it goes to the point Wendy talked about, it getting weaponized. To now, when you're looking for somebody, and believe me, there's people on the other side of the aisle who are saying, Biden's a candidate, what can we find on Biden? And the hashtag Me Too is one of those things then you bring out as a weapon. And the same that happens is what can we do? What can we say to Don Marsh? Well, you shouldn't have said that. There's no context to it, and I'm not saying they're comparable. We're talking one, an innocuous comment, another one, laying of hands. The problem is this ready weapon that everybody's ready to bring out, and sometimes it fits, but when it doesn't, you have the one side trying to jam it into place to make it fit. And that's where I think the problem is.
Okay, let's move on. Alvin, Reid, I want to ask you about Tim Fitch, who's now a member of the St. Louis County Council, and he's also a retired police chief, 31 years with the force in the county. And as a result, he had, past tense, an $85,000 a year pension. Turns out when he got on the county council, county rules say he's got to give it up because he's making $20,000 a year as the county council member. So he's gone around to the other members, said, can you rewrite the rules so I can keep my pension, which I think is reasonable. I don't know why a pensioner has to give up his or her pension to serve on the county council, but he's not getting any love. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm Tim Fitch fan. Hey, you know, been first guy. Hey, I think he's gonna run for office. All that. I'm Tim Fitch fan. But I'm sorry, Tim. Them's the rules and regulations. And I kind of think Tim got the okey doke pulled on him. Like, hey, you go ahead and run. You win. Then we'll take care of it.
Don't worry about it.
Hey, don't worry about that. We got that. And then they said they didn't have anything.
The okey doke.
And I kind of, I feel bad for him, but Hazel Irby said, like, you know, we're kind of a little shy on that because we brought up we went off on, McCullough because adjusting his pension. So I really don't see us coming to your defense at this time. She kind of like, we'll bring this up later after you cough up a couple years.
There's a lot of heat on him right now with Stangergate and Better Together, and so maybe when things just sort of cool off a little bit, we'll do another okey doke round and see what happens.
Well, there's a different. McCullough's deal was an entirely different issue. To the point you're raising, it is curious that the rule exists, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, if the rule's there, the rule's there, and certainly if you come in with, I guess the pun intended, with the police chief, all your guns blazing, and pretty controversial to say the least, and as I say, I've liked him a long time, but he's also been very intemperate in the case of Stanger and so forth. It's a little hard to expect that the people you're, kind of going after in the county council are going to cut you slack. I don't quite understand the basis of why that rule's there. On the other hand, I don't know, do the council people get, how should he be getting multiple pensions? I mean, the question at some point is what's reasonable. That law, the rule itself seems kind of strange.
I agree.
I mean, but it is.
Well,
It's in place.
It's unreasonable. If I had an $80,000 pension
place.
coming to me and was told sorry, I would think it was unreasonable too. But
No, absolutely. No,
that's exactly right. When you're reading your manual, it's like, I think
he
I'll
knew
know.
also.
Right.
He was upfront about that he did know, and they told him, it's something that maybe we could, handle. And he didn't, maybe he put his faith in people that couldn't handle it, but he did know. So it isn't like all of a sudden they walked in and just.
Well, let me ask you another question about local civics, because we had a big election. Well, not that big, because almost nobody showed up this past Tuesday. Yeah. But, I mean, MSD didn't pass. Some school districts got the money they were looking for. But in Ferguson, after an ACL lawsuit, Alvin, Reid, they tried something that really doesn't take place around here much at all. It's called cumulative voting. And if there are, let's say, 3 people running for school board, and there were 2 open seats, every voter got 2 different shots, 2 votes, which could be expended on 2 different candidates or 1 candidate. And the idea was to increase minority representation, but it didn't really work out that way. They got a white candidate and a black candidate, and it's pretty much the status quo. I kind of think that the ACLU misread the Ferguson situation, thinking that African Americans were disenfranchised. Instead, I think that there's just a lack of interest in voting in places like Ferguson.
Well, I mean, both are right. But one, however many years ago, I guess 2 now, Mayor Knowles was reelected. And remember, everybody in Ferguson hated Mayor Knowles. And he won handily, against a black candidate. So thus, you already had if the interest is not there to vote, and I'm saying if the interest is not there, we can all bang our heads against the wall as long as we want to. It won't have any consequence. That doesn't mean the ACLU was wrong in approaching it that way. We'll see how it plays out. There are a lot of things that are going into place locally, statewide, nationally at this time that let's go 8 years down the line, and I guarantee you that the result will be people will be turning their heads and saying either what were we thinking or this was a good idea.
There's a great old saying in advertising and just about everything. It's KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And I think that when you start talking about cumulative voting and you've got 2 and you've got a fraction and if I've got to work, take my child to childcare or to my mother's house or whatever, cumulative voting, I imagine, but I would probably pass myself, even though it's not complicated. It sounds complicated.
Yeah, well, and it was 4% at my voting place in Kirkwood when I voted, and usually it's first thing in the morning. It was late afternoon. So I mean, even
everywhere.
Even in the birthplace.
Maybe we shouldn't have April elections, frankly.
I don't think it disproves the ACLU's point about minority representation, and I think they were right to do it. And I haven't always found myself in agreement lately with the ACLU as much as I once did, but I do think that the community has to look inward in terms of turnout. I mean, that's the job of the candidates. You got to turn out. You can't blame at the end of the day with this sort of reform that I do think was appropriate. You've got to ask yourselves if the candidates have got to think about turnout, whoever they are.
Joe Holleman, I want to ask you, it seems like after this past week, they're eating well in heaven.
Yeah.
We talked last week that Kim Tucci, one of the pasta house owners, passed away. And then after that, Carmen Lombardo, whose family owns Lombardo's restaurants downtown and at the airport and elsewhere. Mark Price, one of the owners of Biggie's on Watson since 1992. And maybe the dean of restaurateurs, Vince Bomarito, the legendary owner of Tony's, passed away. One of the most award-winning restaurants in the history of St. Louis.
Well, for any like myself, a native St. Louisan, I remember as a kid, Tony's equaled the finest of dining. I mean, you know, it was like, say, what are you going to do? Go to Tony's?
Right.
That meant you were spending as, you know, much money, fanciest place around. And when I did go there, I realized that reputation was well deserved.
Right.
And Mr. Bomarito was a combination. He could be gruff and blunt as any human being you'd ever want to meet. Also had wonderful stories, very helpful. I wrote the obituary that was in the Post-Dispatch, and the chefs talking about how helpful he was. Gerard Kraft said, I kind of came to town and I was the competition. He said the guy was nothing but helpful and supportive. Nice. You know, and I think that showed a confidence on what he had at Tony's. And the reason he had that, and I think one of the things that he mentioned, and one of the chefs said this, when you went to Tony's, Vince Bomarito was there. You know, and I think a lot of people in this day think anybody can own a restaurant, anybody can run a bar. It's two major fallacies. The reason Tony's was so good at what they did was because there was one person there making sure it was good at what they did, and he was hard to work for. He had rules. He had ways he wanted things done. But he left that behind in that no matter who you were, and a lot of famous people went into Tony's.
Yes.
I'll tell a short story. A friend of mine and his wife went in there for an anniversary. First time they'd ever been there. They brought a camera with them. And they're like, boy, this is a very fancy place. Who do I ask to take a photo? Vince goes, what do you? He goes, it's an anniversary. He goes, here, get over there. Vince grabs the camera, takes the photo, sits down at the table with them. Made their night.
Wow,
you know,
yeah.
that's okay. Something that's missing.
Thank you.
It's such an interesting study in contrast, isn't it, in terms of like Kim Tucci, who was Mr. Broadway, and Vince Bomarito, I think he prepared to be on the line in the kitchen, and they both put us on the map. Gastronomically, there is no doubt about it. Vince Bomarito with the mobile rating, wow, people did come from all over for that experience.
He was, I mean, there's a question, he was the greatest of all time in St. Louis, and really nationally was among the really top restaurants in the country for so many years. And but reading, as all St. Louisans, hanging on your every word, it was the piece really was compelling in the fact that the people that are the younger generation of restaurateurs, Gerard, and there were a couple, Kevin was in there. There were a bunch of people that were really the up-and-coming young generation. Had so much respect for him. I think that says a lot about.
What did Vince do when people dined and dashed, Ray?
I don't know, man.
There was one
accident. I came back. But it was the reason I was telling for our viewers. I was telling a story about how I was there with my wife, and Mr. Bomarito spent about 45 minutes at the end of the night giving us, you know, and just, it was mostly, even though I talked too much, it was about listening because he had one story after another. And we just said goodnight and left, and we got just about ready to get on Highway 40, realized we hadn't paid.
Wow.
We did come back.
The old pulling a Hartmann.
Yeah,
hey, now, Ray, you're lucky the restaurant wasn't in St. Anne because they would have chased you.
Yes,
actually, Aaron Heffernan had a great piece in Sunday's paper showing how St. Anne police will chase over an expired tag or lack of insurance, and it's resulted in dozens of injuries, some deaths, and the question is, should police chase? Well, you got to enforce the law, right?
Wrong in this case. It was absolutely, the police chief made a comment that we're going to chase till the wheels come off. You know, that's great if you're, you know, want to audition for a Dirty Harry. In the real world, this is what you tell that to the families of innocent bystanders who died or disabled for life as a result of we chase till the wheels come off. Look, if there's an armed, you know, felony in progress, there are cases in which you're going to have to chase. But they are very, very limited. And it is so irresponsible. And I always say this thing, one of the parties that is truly jeopardized by this, that we underrate in this case, is the police officer. We're putting their lives and their families in jeopardy over a trespasser or over whatever
chasing.
it is. It's wrong. They shouldn't be allowed to do it.
Is there evidence the police don't want to do it?
Well, I don't care whether
if
it is.
Your boss is
they're supposed to be about public safety.
We're going to chase them till the wheels fall off because they know that they can't commit crime in St. Anne. You know, you should not have numbers that are similar to the city of St. Louis.
If we poured through all of the first reports of this or that, and we would probably be not amazed, but we'd probably be kind of chuckling at all the chases that don't happen, where they do stand down. So I'm not going to chase this dude.
Well, that happens. That happens in other jurisdictions.
Yeah, I know,
that's
right.
for sure.
This is ridiculous.
But 17 innocent bystanders.
And that's crazy. And this will stop the day a police officer or the police chief or the mayor or the city council, somebody gets injured by one of the police officers chasing after somebody. That'll be it.
Yeah.
Maybe so, but St. Anne is trying to keep its streets safe where a lot of municipalities aren't able to do it. That's the problem.
I think sometimes my question comes into is certainly there's a problem, but it reminds me a bit in a weird way of Better Together. Everybody has a problem with the way it is, but they don't necessarily have a solution to it or a better idea. So what I'd like to see is, okay, if we believe that St. Anne is chasing too much, what's the solution? And if you're going to give me don't ever chase a criminal, then there's a problem there too. And while I understand it was over the top with the wheels falling off.
Guys, we're out of time. We're going to have to take those calls on your turn, which is just around the corner. But you can always write us.
You said it's over.
Pick up a pen and write us, care of KETC, St. Louis, Missouri 63108. Don't forget those emails. Type away at letters@ketc.org. And those tweets at hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Because I think, who's on your turn? Oh, yeah, it's Ray and Wendy. Don't forget you can follow us on the podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. Your turn will start in a matter of moments. Thanks to Joe Holleman for sitting in and doing a great job. Don't go away, everybody, because your calls on your turn are next with Ray Hartmann and Wendy Wiese. Have a great evening.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Local programming on the 9 Network is generously supported by the Betsy Hosh Patterson and Thomas O. Patterson Foundation, committed to upholding quality, informative, and entertaining programming in our region.
Welcome to Donnybrook, your turn. I will be assisting the star of our show, but before we get started, because he is always the first to point out our special occasions, we want to wish our fearless leader, our provocateur, Charles Brennan, and his beautiful wife, Beth Storr, his accomplished wife, Beth Storr, a very happy anniversary. 27 years that woman has put up.
Happy
with
anniversary.
That man. So we salute you, Beth Storr.
I believe they'll be
happy anniversary, you
they'll
two.
Be erecting a statue of her.
A couple of statues
by the
of
time
Beth
they hit
Storr.
30. But thank you, and that was the big story. We missed it somehow. But let's go to the calls. The happy anniversary. Let's go to Rick in St. Louis. Hello,
Hi, Rick.
Yeah, hi, Wendy. Hey, you guys, I love the show. I really get a kick out of it, and I'm glad somebody's discussing this stuff. I run a small remodeling business, and most of my customers, most of my homeowners are women. And so I do a lot of work for them. They're always very appreciative, and a lot of times I hug my homeowners. They hug me, and there's some love there without all the overtones and the sexual innuendos. It's just a very, my homeowners, they appreciate it. So the Don Marsh and Karen Foss, I mean, I tell people all the time they look great. I mean, girls too, but I don't know. I think there's a point where they're just taking it too far, I believe. And I'm 55 years old. I'm old. So things were different when things were different when we grew up. Everything was different, and people were friendlier and nicer, and these are the people that I like to hang out with. And there's men that I really get along with great, and they're good friends, and they get a hug too,
Right.
So I've been hugging more homeowners, and and everybody's feels more brotherly.
Thanks for the kind words about the show and for the call.
Rick. Yeah, my grandmother never shook anybody's hand. She kissed everybody like square on the mouth. She'd probably be in prison today. So we thank you, Rick. Let's go to JR in South St. Louis. We haven't heard from you for a while, JR. How are you? Welcome back.
Yeah, good evening. I would just like to say that I think everybody on the panel tonight looked great. I just hope you don't get my phone number off caller ID and call the police on me. Thank you.
No, we'll give you a gift card.
Yeah.
We'll give you a gift card, JR. Thank you for calling.
You might get some calls from some TV repair people, but not us.
Yeah, really.
It's Joanne from St. Charles. Welcome
Hi,
to the
Joanne.
show.
Hi. Well, I would concur with the previous caller that everybody on the panel looked great today. And also to say happy anniversary to anybody who's been married 27 years.
Right.
But what I'd like to comment on is that the last time Alvin Reid was a provocateur in the absence of Charlie Brennan, he made a comment to Wendy about how she looked pretty or she looked great. I didn't know, and I've never said anything about it until now, but I actually thought it was inappropriate because he didn't say to any of the men, you look great, you look well, or whatever.
You really
Wendy
thought that?
looked
Did you
great.
really think that was inappropriate?
No, honest to God, I really did. But I want to say that Wendy looked great all the time.
Their lawyers are working
great all the time.
Their lawyers are working
but I'm
this
just
out.
saying, I did think it was inappropriate.
I don't remember him saying that because usually he's pretty sensitive about that kind of thing. But I take your word for it. I probably, maybe I gave him a gift card and bribed him to say it. So I will talk to him about it, and I guarantee you he meant nothing.
I thought your lawyers were sorting this whole thing out.
It's kind of a quiet thing.
I actually was hurt. All this talk about how good is that? Did something happen?
You're beautiful.
Did something happen to Channel 9's high def signal?
I know something is going on.
We must not be in high def tonight.
Thank you. Thank you
very much for the call. Who's next?
Fred in Florissant. Hi, Fred. How are you? Welcome.
How you doing? I enjoyed the show.
Just please don't comment on our appearance.
I'm sorry?
Just don't say anything about how we look. I'm just kidding. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind?
Okay, about the cumulative voting, I happened to hear a Don Marsh broadcast, whatever that's called, Landscape St. Louis, whatever he was on at 12 noon, about a week and a half ago, and he had an UMSL professor on, I forgot the name, and they were discussing rank voting and cumulative voting, among other different types of votings that have been popping up.
Right.
Now, the professor seemed to think, I heard him say that the purpose for the, numerically I can't see how there's a difference myself, but the professor seemed to think that in these cases where there was 50% majority takes the win, that here you could, with cumulative voting and rank voting, you could wind up with a winner who didn't have the majority.
Uh-huh.
Now,
well, that's what we have in the city of St. Louis.
I'm sorry?
That's what we had in the city of St. Louis in the primaries, was the winner didn't have a majority.
Well, I don't know if the Constitution says we're supposed to have majority voting. I don't know. Huh. But we only got notice of this 2 to 3 weeks by a postcard before the election. So I found that a little disturbing. I called the election board, St. Louis County, and they were partners in the lawsuit trying to defend the way it was and not going with the ACLU.
Okay.
Maybe they were waiting for a more favorable decision. I don't know. But we only got wind of it out here a week and a half, 2 weeks before the election.
Okay.
So I wanted to make those comments.
Well, thank you for
calling.
Thank
you for letting us know, Fred. We appreciate it. I had not heard about the short notice.
Let's go to the Twitterverse to JDR 1949. Karen Foss. Nope, the best female broadcaster is Wendy Wiese.
Apparently,
who can argue with that?
Apparently, it's Thirsty Thursday somewhere, but I love you, whoever you are. At Yorkie Lady 53. Have none of you seen photos of Joe Biden hugging and being physical with males and females? Some people are just physical in the way they interact with others. I do not think that Biden was any kind of sexual predator. Thank you, at Yorkie Lady 53.
And we should point out, no one's accused him of
well,
being that.
the women who have come forward said that he made them feel uncomfortable.
That's not calling him a sexual predator.
No, of course not.
Okay, Woolen Dog Airs tweets, where I come from, telling someone they look good equates to you look well, happy, and healthy. While I support Me Too, even a good thing can be manipulated to unfairly accuse in political circumstances. Thank you for that tweet.
At Craig Riggins. Exactly who does Tim Fitch think he is? He knew or should have known the rules before he decided to run for a seat on the county council. That's a lot of nerve and a sense of entitlement to ask the council to amend the rules to accommodate him.
All right. We got one last one from
more.
Karen Olson. I wonder if the Tim Fitch pension situation is a double dip. You can't draw both a salary and a pension from the county, perhaps. If you go back to work for the county, you can't be retired too. And that tweet, as I say, that one, I'm not sure, and as I say, I'm interested in whether you can get multiple pensions from the county, because that's been an issue in other places. But we thank you all. Keep the tweets coming to hashtag Donnybrook, STL.
That's right. Let's go to Mike in Leslie, first-time caller. Hello, Mike. How are you tonight?
How you two young folks doing?
Thank
you.
Listen, I consider myself a happy person, and one of my jobs as a happy person is to try to make everybody else around me happy, which includes things like compliments and hugs. And, should I rethink my whole way of life over this? I don't think so. But I am, reconsidering sometimes when I walk up and people look weird at me. That's just a joke. Anyhow, Biden is from a different school, long time ago. And I don't think he should run for president.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I do not think this should be disqualifying. I'm sorry. I mean, Democrats are going to have to sort this out. I have a column this week in the RFT trying to make the point that this is no more than a 15-state election, and arguably, if you could come down to the 4 states that President Trump won by 1% or less, which would be Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And the Democrats have got to be thinking about who can carry those states. And Joe Biden would seem to be among the most likely. I think it's too early to say. Yeah, but they've got to get past. However they do it, I think it very well may be a progressive candidate is the best choice at this point. I'm not. I don't know what I think yet, but I don't think
Nancy Pelosi said that this is not disqualifying, and so
we'll see. And I also don't think it is generational, but I don't. It's going to be an interesting primary season, that's for sure. Let's go to Marvin from Belleville.
Hi,
Hello,
Marvin.
Hi, I'm a first-time caller.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I think you have a great show.
Thanks.
I want to make this comment, and I hope it's not seen in the wrong way. St. Louis is a growing population. African Americans have more and more impact on city politics and now county politics. I would love to see your show expand some and become a little more diverse. I love Alvin. He's a great guy. But I think that St. Louis needs, given the microphone that you have, to express a little more diversity in your assembly, maybe more people, so it's a little bit different views so we can grow out of the problems that we have regarding that.
Okay.
That's my comment.
Well, thanks for that comment.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it, and please call again. Let's go to Bill in Bonne Terre. Hi, Bill. Welcome. You're on Donnybrook. Your turn.
One of your tweets said what I was going to say. I tell people they look good all the time, and that just means they look healthy or whatever. What was he supposed to say to Karen? Good Lord, woman, what happened to you? You know, I don't get that. And, you know, women come up to me and hug me all the time. My wife says, because I'm reasonably attractive. Should I start shoving them backwards?
No.
Well, in fairness, nobody, and Karen Foss does look great, actually. But I don't think that anyone, I mean, there's some question as to whether, I don't think there are very many people in the world that actually would have a problem with Don Marsh complimenting
No,
Karen
but
Foss on her
someone
look.
who is younger and doesn't understand how men and women, and especially professional colleagues, used to greet each other, and everyone actually used to greet each other without a grand jury being impaneled. You know,
yeah, I think there's more to this story than that. That's all I have to say. I don't know what it is.
Well,
I don't know who it was or what their reasons were, but it couldn't have just possibly been over that greeting. So, but we'll see. We'll know. Who knows if we'll find out or not. Who's next?
William in Florissant.
Hey,
Hello, William.
How you doing?
Good evening. Really enjoy your show.
Thank you.
I don't know if this is a question or comment, but I would like to know why it takes these women so long to complain about certain things. Why do they wait 10, 15, 20 years before they open their mouth? Why can't they open their mouth when it happens? And the other side is, why did they wait till a man is about to accomplish something in his life, then they'll bring it up? Would they do the same if that guy was a homeless man? Would they bring it up? I don't think so. So it's something wrong with that.
Well, William, you're right. There is no statute of limitations on this type of thing. And because we are already in I was really wondering how big the stage would have to be during the Democratic debates during primary season, because we are into double digits now, are we not? I think this could easily have been one of his opponents who thinks, and to his credit, Joe Biden is already a fairly accomplished politician and national leader. And there was a great deal of press about the loss of his son and some of his personal tragedies. So maybe they waited until after that cloud had passed off of the immediate news cycle horizon. Right. But yeah, they felt emboldened to come forward now. And who knows if they were nudged or pushed or.
Well, I don't know.
We won't know until after the 2020 election, in my opinion.
My reaction to the caller, as far as timing goes, is I think one of the positive things about the Me Too movement is women feel able to tell their stories, and I think that's
because
that's
professionally
fine.
there was such a penalty.
Having said that, I don't think it's corroborative when a story's out there and a couple women have this story, and then 2 or 3 more come out and 2 or 3 more with the same. Everybody gets it. I mean, in other words, there's nothing new. I think it's fine. I mean, and people, it's going to be part of what voters look at on the Democratic primary side when they judge the candidates. And if you're in the public eye,
I think
it's pretty plain to see.
Younger progressive voters will, Ray. But
no, I'm saying it
not.
will factor in either positively or negatively in Joe Biden's case. As I said, I don't think it's disqualifying. Some people will. But the thing about it is I think it is important, at least in this case, to distinguish between, sexual harassment or assault and, this, what I think is a constructive point is that there are boundaries and there's different norms today than there were even for someone who's a retail politician like Joe Biden. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think a lot of it's going to be how he handles it. I think so far he's weathering the storm. We'll see when the primary season gets going and they're actually out in hand-to-hand combat, or I guess it won't be hand to hand, right? They'll be not touching each other. But in any case, we'll see. But thanks for the call, and we'll go to Dave in Defiance.
Hi, Dave.
How are you, Dave?
Good evening. I'm fine, and you?
Fine, thank you.
I got a comment to make, and this is just something that, just by watching the television commercial that I see on the Me Too movement, and Fresh Time runs a commercial where a young lady puts her head on a gentleman's shoulder who was a firefighter, and she says hot peppers for hot firefighters. Why isn't there some type of a Me Too movement involved in something like that when the gal does it to the guy versus it always seems the guy is doing it to a girl and everybody's up in arms, but nobody says anything when it goes the other way.
Maybe that's a cultural thing. You know, that
is this you talking about this a commercial?
He's saying why is it okay for a woman to speak in a saucy manner to a man, but it is the reverse isn't.
I don't know that that's true in all commercials. I think it's I think this is a slightly different, but I understand your point. Any of these things can be whataboutism, you know, but I think that the fundamental point about women saying, and it's not something most people noticed, but now that it was brought up, there is a fundamental point women have a right to make about boundaries and space.
Stay in your lane.
And that's fine. And I think it's been made, as I say, I don't keep saying the same thing. I don't, whether it's what it's going to do to the outcome of the primary. The one thing is clear. It will not be an issue in the general forum if he gets there, because the guy he's running against is not going to be able to use, would be a very interesting
but that was, for what it's worth, that was
use.
that was if you're referring to the conversation, that was not with anybody.
All right, who's next?
Thank you. Let's go to Elaine in St. Genevieve. Hi, Elaine, welcome.
Hi, thank you. I have a real problem with Lucy Flores. She was about 31, 32 years old when this happened. She had been in the state legislature. She was running for lieutenant governor. If this incident with Joe Biden was so traumatic, why did she wait 5 years to bring it out? Supposedly, someone running for a state-level office ought to have enough moxie, enough confidence, enough verbal skills to have taken him aside later and said, hey, I didn't appreciate that, and I'm sure other women wouldn't either. So I have a real problem with that. The second problem I have with the Me Too movement is people, and I'm talking about I think, Attorney General in Virginia. Before anybody knew his story, and we still don't know all of it, people were saying, including Nancy Pelosi, we believe the women. Well, how can you say that if there hasn't really been any kind of forum to find out both sides? The third thing is, why aren't people saying, well, we also believe Joe Biden. This is who Joe was. He understands it now. And so I'm kind of fed up, and I'm a liberal, by the way. I'm a real liberal. I've marched. I've done everything. Those are my comments, and good. I'll take it off fair. Thank you.
Well stated. What do you think? The one thing I didn't see, and again, it's such a delicate thing that the media's got to be walking on eggshells, but did this, I forget her name, the lady that the first.
Lucy Flores.
Lucy Flores. Yeah. Is there any evidence of kind of contemporaneously, did she complain to other people about it at the time?
Well,
because that would be an interesting question.
He was a party leader. Right. She was a statewide office holder, and there are certain unspoken rules in politics and in newsrooms, and you are not going to make a big, hairy deal out of something like that he did not accost her, but he made her feel uncomfortable.
No, you're missing my point. I'm not saying why didn't she come out then. I understand why she didn't. That's one of the positive things about Me Too is she felt emboldened to do that. Now, the question is, did she tell other folks privately about this at the time? Is what I was kind of curious as to whether if she felt that way.
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know, just whether this was something that just it's happened to surface once because there are folks that are questioning why it's happening now. That's all. It's just an interesting question.
Well, but as you said, we could what about ourselves, to the end times. It's always because it's a politically expedient period, or something. Somebody has something to benefit.
Oh, we'll see. Let's go to Jean from Oakville. Hey, Jean.
Hi, Jean.
Hello, Wendy and Reid. Thank you for taking my call. I want to tell you, I'm 84 years old, and I've spent a lifetime going to the beauty parlor and buying makeup. And if Don Marsh wants to tell me I look great, I would certainly appreciate it. Believe me, that is the silliest thing I have ever heard in my life. My husband was an elected official in the city of St. Louis for years, and everybody went around hugging everybody else, and we women tried to look the best we could. That's the way of life.
This was, if we are to believe what has been presented in the media, this was through the eyes of a younger person. And I'm not throwing all millennials or Gen Xers or whatever generation they were from, but they look at things through a different prism than the rest of us. And that's why I think these conversations are so important, because how else are they going to learn that Don Marsh was not in any way being predatory, that Karen Foss returned the salutation, if you will. She returned the greeting. She said, "You look great too," because she thought of it as a compliment about her vitality and her health. So we agree with you, Jean. I agree with you. I'm not speaking for my colleague, but I agree with you.
Well, and I mean, there's no question there's a generational element to it, but I have to admit I'm conflicted, because I'm obviously extremely old, but still don't trust anybody over 30. So it's kind of, I'm in the middle. But I actually think that there's plenty of people who are millennials who understand that. I don't think it's, I think there's a generational element to this, but I think that there's also, it's just changing norms. I don't know that it's
I think it's hypersensitivity, and in many areas it's hysteria.
That's not so, well, okay. Well, let's go to the Twitterverse. From
at ReadyPapo09, I believe Clarence Hartmann collected his police chief's pension while serving as the city's mayor. Mr. Fitch earned and deserves his pension. We thank you.
It's an interesting question, or interesting point, if it's true. From Scott Bramstead. Don Marsh is one of the most intelligent interviews in St. Louis. I hope he is not lost to us forever. I don't believe he is. Thank you for that tweet, Scott, and send them all to hashtag Donnybrook STL. Let's go to Rich from Crestwood. Hey, Rich, what's on your mind?
Are you there, Rich?
Do we have Rich?
Rich going once, going twice.
Can you hear me?
There he is. Rich, how you doing?
There he is. Hi, Rich.
Now we can.
Yeah, good. I got a question for Wendy.
Okay.
Earlier, she said that the actions of Joe Biden made her feel creepy. What do the actions of Donald Trump make you feel?
I qualified that in the first show. I said that you can't. Did I or did I not?
You qualified it. I'd say creepier, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you cannot.
There's no comparison.
Yeah, there is no
there's no comparison. I'm sorry. Let's go to the Access Hollywood tape and take a guy that's too tactile on the campaign trail.
But there was no one.
There's no comparison.
There was no one in the RV with him. He wasn't touching anybody.
Excuse me.
He was talking, and yes, it was verbally. It was an assault. It was definitely verbally an assault.
Wait, let's bring forward the porn stars that Joe Biden's paid off, and we can have a comparison.
Okay.
There's no comparison. None.
But I'm saying that when you nuzzle someone from the back.
It's a bad look.
It's a very bad look.
It's a bad look. We all agree. But there's no comparison.
Well,
None.
yeah, actually there is, Ray.
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
No, we're talking
They're
about.
both wrong.
We're talking about.
They're both wrong.
We're talking about unpleasant creepiness and assault. I'm sorry. There's no.
They're both acting inappropriately.
Yeah, and there's like traffic tickets and stealing, but I mean, which are both crimes, but no.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, thanks, Rich.
And we have 60. Do we have 60 seconds for Bob in Oakville?
Hey, Bob, how are you? What's on your mind?
Yeah, we're doing good out here, Bob and Reid. Yeah, talking about the touchy-feely.
Okay.
Which everybody else seems to be. Has anyone tried to define in current terms the situation as being irrational. It just
Hysteria.
doesn't have-
Hysteria.
Well,
it's hysteria, in my opinion.
That's a good word. I love that word, hysteria. And if hysteria or hysterical, which would you call it?
Both.
Well, but you've also defended the women's position on feeling creeped out by it.
Absolutely,
So
but
it's
not in the
hysteria.
case of Don Marsh.
Oh,
there
you're
is
Don Marsh.
absolutely
Okay.
no
Don
defending
Marsh
that.
that was kind of ridiculous.
No, not defending
All
that
right,
at all.
we're out of
Thank
time.
you, Bob. We'll take this off the air.
Thank you for everybody for calls. We'll see you again next Thursday night. Have a nice week.
You look
Good
nice,
night.
Ray.
Go Cards.